You could win $1,000 in free gasoline from Exxon and Mobil just by telling us what fuels you and getting your friends to vote for your entry. It's the Exxon and Mobil What Fuels You contest. Rules and details at Exxon.com and Mobil.com.
This is the Best of Mike and Mike podcast on ESPNRadio.com. The Best of Mike and Mike.
Hey, it's Gola. Thanks for checking out the Best of Mike and Mike podcast. Here's what we've got for today. Greeny is defending the play call by Pete Carroll and the Seahawks. What's the future hold for the Browns as Johnny Manziel enters rehab? Plus, the latest on the Seahawks, Browns, and more with Chris Mortensen, Louis Riddick, and Brock Huard.
The Best of Mike and Mike.
If you are stuck inside, by all means, put your feet up. We will do our best to keep you entertained and keep you company for 4 hours. How are you, big fella?
I'm doing well. Got a great workout. You know, a weekend on the road, it's tough sometimes to get a workout in, so I shoveled the driveway yesterday.
How'd that go?
I'm really tired afterward. I just went out there and said, I'm going to go work out by shoveling the driveway.
How long does that take?
It took me longer than I thought. It took me a little over 2 hours.
2 hours?
Yeah. To do everything, you know.
Don't you have one of those, like, blowers? I mean, couldn't you use something like
No, I use something like that, too. But I got a driveway, I got a walkway, I got a deck for the dogs, I got then once
you're doing the dog decks, you know, you got
there's
problems.
a lot of area that the snowblower won't work. So, you know, you got to just dig in with the shovel. Thank God I didn't have the kiddie shovel that you have for shoveling snow, because I'm sure that shovel hasn't seen snow since.
So once, as is the case with most things, like with mowing the lawn. I did it 1.5 times.
And then you called.
I felt good about it the first time. The second time I said, what in the world am I doing this for? And that was the end of that. All right, Mike and Mike, here's what I want to start with.
Yeah.
The little clip you heard in there, thanks to everybody at Seth Meyers. I had a great time there last night, as always. And I spent a lot of time in cars yesterday. I went down to the city to do Seth Meyers, then I came all the way back up here.
And let me just say, I had some reasons that I couldn't make it, and I'm sorry, but I'm happy you got to sit next to Seth finally.
Well, I opened with that.
Yeah.
I opened with how I finally can see him.
Yeah.
I said, it's nice to see you, and I mean that literally.
Yeah. Yeah.
But anyway, so I spent a lot of time in cars, and I read a lot of things, in particular the 538 column, 538.com piece yesterday. And so what I would like to begin with this morning is offering a defense of the indefensible.
Russell Wilson extends the hands he has. Wilson, quick throw. And it's good. Intercepted. Intercepted by Malcolm Butler. Butler has it at the 1. Malcolm Butler stepped in front of the throw. And the Patriots have possession with 20 seconds to go in Super Bowl 49 with a 4-point lead over the Seahawks.
It's got to be one of the dumbest calls offensively in Super Bowl history.
All right, so 98.5, the Sports Hub. That was Scott Zolak said it immediately. Chris Collinsworth said it immediately. And then the entire rest of the world has said it repeatedly ever since with a final meaningful play, I suppose, of Super Bowl 49, that it was one of the worst calls of all time. That's one of the conversations that has been had. Let me offer a slightly different look at it, if I can.
Okay.
Okay? Now, here's where the situation starts. The Seahawks begin that sequence with a 1st and goal from around the 5-yard line. They hand the ball to Marshawn Lynch. He takes it down to the 1.
Right.
It is now 2nd down and the clock is running. Mm-hmm. The most important thing that happens there is that Bill Belichick does not call a timeout.
Right.
Now, someday we'll get a chance to ask Bill. The reality is he probably won't answer the question in any meaningful way. But did Belichick purposely not call a timeout for the following reason? Because Seattle only had 1 timeout left, their biggest advantage, what's the single biggest thing they had going for them at that point, is that it wasn't 4th down,
right?
It wasn't 3rd down,
right?
It's 2nd down, which means they have 3 plays from the 1-yard line, but 1 timeout. And the clock moving now to a place, because Belichick doesn't call the timeout. Again, if Belichick calls the timeout, none of this is a factor. But because Belichick doesn't call the timeout, and again, if he really did think this far ahead, then he really is as brilliant as we all say he is. But at that point, if you want to take as a given that one of the big advantages you have is that you have 3 cracks from the 1-yard line, you have to throw a pass on one of them. The timing dictates you can't run the ball 3 times. And if you want to maintain any element of surprise, that pass has to come on the first play. It has to, because if you run the ball on 2nd and 1 with Lynch and you get stuffed, Now the clock is ticking. You've got to get up there, and you can't run the ball again. You don't have time to run the ball again because the clock will run out. So you will then have to throw a pass, and you will be in rushing it mode. You will be in hurry up. We got to get up. We got to get lined up. It is 20 seconds, and the clock will be counting, or you will call your timeout there. Now, what you're going to do is call the timeout. Right. Once you've called the timeout, if you run the ball to Lynch on second down and you don't make it, and you've called the timeout, in my opinion, you have practically removed the element of surprise from third down. You have to either throw the ball or live with the fact that you're only going to get 2 cracks rather than 3. So if indeed everyone was thinking this far ahead, and because there was a timeout to begin the sequence, it is possible everyone was. Just go through it again. First down, they run it to the 1. Second down with the clock ticking, if you run it there, you're going to have to use your final timeout. Now it's going to be 3rd and goal from the 1. And you either only have, at that point, 1 more play, or you have to throw a pass. So, in my opinion, you could look at it and say it was the right thing to do in order to utilize all of your assets, meaning take advantage of the fact that you have 3 cracks from the 1. Here's the biggest argument against it, and I want to defer to your expertise on this, okay? Is the pass, the particular pass they called, a particularly risky pass, which is to say, the one thing you cannot have is what happened. Well, right? If you're going to throw a pass, the good part of the pass is that if it is incomplete, the clock stops. What you absolutely cannot have is an interception. So the real question is the pass they threw, because it's in the middle of the field, my less understanding football mind, I'm a fan and a coverer of the sport, but I didn't play it, I didn't coach it. So you'll have to answer this. I look at it and I say, you throw a ball right into the middle of a packed-in defense. That's a risky pass. There is a chance that's going to get intercepted, if only because there are a lot of bodies in there wearing blue jerseys. That, to me, would be the biggest criticism I can think of. Maybe throwing something on the outside, a fade, something like that, where your chances of getting intercepted are far lesser, is a safer play. But I think I've come around to thinking that if you want to take advantage of the fact that you have 3 cracks, throwing a pass on second down actually makes sense. So, first, I'd just like you to answer me the question.
No, I don't agree. I'd have run the ball.
You'd have run the ball.
Yeah, I still would have. I would have run the ball. Use the timeout.
Yeah. Right? So let's just go. We've got to play it out. If you don't make it, obviously, if you make it, now you've scored. Oh, everything is fine. You got a 3-point lead with roughly 20 seconds left, and you got to stop them for 20 seconds. A far better alternative than what happened, obviously.
Right.
But if you get stopped, now it's third down, and you only have 1 timeout left. So at that point, do you run it again, or are you going to throw a pass?
Would you still have a timeout?
Now you've used your last timeout.
You can do whatever you want. You could pass it there. You could run it. You could get yourself.
Can you run 2 plays? The first is a running play from the 20-yard line. With 20 seconds.
They ran that play with 26 seconds ago. So roughly, it's low 20s left.
Well, as it turned out, it was exactly 20, right? When the interception happens, it was exactly 20.
Right. Play started at 20.
So let's call it. Let's say there's going to be 20 seconds.
Sure, you can.
So you're going to hand the ball off to Lynch,
or you can throw the ball.
Well, if you're going to throw the ball, that's fine. But that's my argument. Is you were going to. You're saying you were going to throw the ball anyway.
Right, but no. I get it. You're going to have to throw it on one of the plays.
Right.
I would have run it there.
You would have run it on second rather than on third.
I would have run it there. I may have thrown it on fourth, even though everybody knew in the world.
But you couldn't throw it on fourth. That's my point. You're not going to get to fourth if you're going to run it on second and call the timeout. You're going to have to then throw it on third and fourth.
Why? There's 20 seconds to go. You can't run a play at the 1-yard line and get set and run up another play?
2 running plays?
In 20 seconds, or a running play or a pass. Run then a pass. Whatever. You have a timeout. You can get 2 plays set.
No.
Hold on.
Go ahead.
You call timeout.
Right.
There's 20 seconds to go.
Right.
Okay?
Yes.
All right. So you run a play, you line back up, you run another play, or you throw the ball.
So you're saying that you would be confident that in those 20 seconds, you're going to run 1 running play,
or you could throw it.
And throw another.
Or you could throw it on that play.
I get that. But my point is, once you're throwing it on that play, then you've basically done the same thing he did anyway, just in the reverse order. So he isn't the biggest idiot in the world. Listen, I'm not arguing I would have done it that way.
I'm running the ball first. I'm giving my guy the chance to run it in before I throw it.
Before you throw it.
Yes. Because that's who I want the ball in the hands of, is Marshawn Lynch at the 1-yard line or Russell Wilson running the ball. That's what I do. I get what you're saying.
Because the other way of thinking, again, let me just finish it out. And I know that you get it, but for anyone who might not get it, if you want to if you're making the decision that you're going to pass it once and run it twice, then the way he did it is the best way to do it, as far as not taking any chance on the clock running out on you. If you're going to throw it once and run it twice.
I don't think the clock's going to. You got 20 seconds to run 2 plays. You can do that.
If one of them is a running play,
sure you
and
can.
assuming the third down play is a running play.
You have a timeout. You get 2 plays. You get the combination of 2 plays, and you run them.
If you're confident you can do that,
it's
right.
from the
You don't need
1 yard
your
line.
offensive
It's
lineman
from the
running
1 yard
downfield.
line.
Right.
A 1 yard run, if you don't make it, is not going to take 10 seconds.
Right.
You are going to get in, or you're going to get tackled behind the line.
4, 5, 6 seconds.
Give you 6, 7
seconds. So now
seconds.
the clock is ticking.
And here's
with
the
13
thing.
seconds
Everybody
left.
is right there to line up again. Now, what the defense will do is try and lay on somebody. I get it. Now, the thing is, you are rushing to get the play. I get that. But you could just say it takes 6, 7 seconds. You have 13 seconds to set up and run another play? Yeah, you could. You're all at the 1 yard line. Right. It's not like you had guys running 30-yard routes down the field and they have to get back to the line of scrimmage. It's not in the middle of the field.
Let me also ask you this.
It can happen.
Let me go back to my previous question, though. Is the pass that they threw a particularly risky pass, in your opinion?
Here's the thing. Anytime you throw to the field, the middle of the field, it's risky because of forgetting interception, the ball bouncing in the air. A normal, what you see there is a lot an H-back or a tight end, going out into a quick 1 yard out on a play action. What you could have done there instead of, I tell you, if I was going to throw the ball, here's what I would have done. What was everybody in the world expecting on that play?
Everyone in the world was expecting Marshawn Lynch to run the ball.
Okay, and when the ball was snapped, what did Marshawn Lynch do? Do you remember what he did?
Yes, he ran out to the left
for
a pass.
Because they ran basically the same type of a shield play, pick play, to where he was going to go out into the flats. So at the snap of the ball, what was he never a threat of doing?
Running the ball.
So if you're going to throw the ball, I'm going to throw the ball off play action.
Yes, that part of it I agree with. So the play selection we can argue with.
And
the
also,
decision to throw it on second is what I'm arguing for. Yeah. That it makes some sense.
Listen, why it makes some sense is the bottom line, if you're going to get the number of plays you want, one of them is going to be a throw. It's just what order you put it in.
Correct.
So from that standpoint, yes, it makes sense.
So, but now I'm agreeing with you.
Oh, my God.
The play selection
Everybody
itself.
in the world, all of us, listen to what the discussion was yesterday, was Marshawn. So you say we're going to pass here. My God, I mean, how many times do you see a play action and the guy running wide, a tight end who's blocking down, you throw the play action, all of a sudden he leaks out. Now, I'm not saying it would have worked and he'd have been wide open, but that's the play I'm running. On a slant or anything in the middle, whatever route you run in the middle of the field, there's the fear of a bounce. In this case, and Chris Carter said it, and I agree, you got to throw that ball lower. So, again, if it's not caught, it's probably incomplete. And in this case, you got to see the guy beelining toward the ball. I think you have to throw it more at him instead of leading him. Throw it at him because the guy, if you see your receiver, you see Butler running straight for the ball, throw it right in the middle of his chest instead of trying to lead him. Now, that's about the technical thing about the play. But the play itself, I absolutely would have, in my mind, I said, okay, the matchup's not in there, we need to throw the ball. I'm still giving the impression that I'm running the ball with Marshawn Lynch, and I'm having Russell Wilson ride that ball in there. Everybody hit hard like they're blocking, and then you leak a guy out and see what happens. At the worst, Russell Wilson, and say, that's your option, and if it's not there, if you have one option, great. If not, give somebody a souvenir.
Now we are in complete agreement.
Yeah.
So I'm not arguing for the play that was called. Right. I am arguing that throwing a pass in that circumstance is not a bad idea because one of the things you have going for you is that you have 3 plays.
Right.
And in this circumstance, let's even take your thought that they could have run the football twice with 20 seconds left. At least now you're not rushed and frantic and crazy. So you throw the pass on second down, and you then maintain the element of surprise. I am in agreement with you, however. The particular play they called leaves a lot to be desired.
And I'll say this. That type of play is run all the time on the goal line.
Yeah.
Picks and shields and screens and rubs are run all the time, whether it's a guy coming inside or whether it's a guy going outside. That stuff happens all the time. So we've seen that play before, but that's the danger of the middle of the field. And you know, you've heard Pete Carroll talk about you don't think about the interception or the fumble. I know you have that.
Yeah, I'll play
and that's true. Because we talked about the interception, you know, all the emails yesterday, people saying, well, if you gave it to Marshawn Lynch, he could have fumbled. You don't think of that. You're thinking of the success of the play. We know the old adage, when you throw a pass, two of the three things that happen, two of the three are bad. You know, there's only one good, the catch, there's an incompletion, and then there's an interception. So, but you don't think about that going in there. You run your play with the confidence that the play is going to work.
We are Mike and Mike. And maybe that's another interesting point. What everyone's talking about, obviously, is this across the planet, it felt like yesterday, brought to you by Myrtle Beach Golf Holiday. Start planning your getaway to Golftown, USA. Visit online at myrtlebeachgolfholiday.com. What you just said is actually another argument in favor of throwing the pass there, because in this particular instance, of the three things that can happen when you throw a pass, two of them were good. And incompletion was fine.
Incompletion
it stopped
was
the
fine.
clock,
Right.
and you have your two cracks.
Right.
So that actually wasn't bad. So in every way, throwing a pass did make some sense. Now, I totally agree with you. Run a play action, bootleg out Russell, because that's his best thing, and tell him, give him one guy. If he's so open that I could throw it, hit him. Otherwise, throw the ball to the guy in the 90th throw.
You give him the option, quite honestly, to either throw the ball or possibly run it.
Right.
The way he runs. So looking at the situation now, I almost feel like maybe a pass was the call, but a play action pass may have been the call.
Play. So I think we're in agreement. Throwing a pass makes some sense.
It makes some
sense. It's the particular play they ran I don't like.
Because, again, you were going to probably have to throw it. If you played all the way out, you were going to have to probably throw a pass. And I get what people are saying as well. Listen, I'm not completely there that a pass should have been thrown. I'm not all the way on your side. There's part of me that still would have run Marshawn Lynch and then call my timeout after that and say, okay, we have 14 seconds left, 15 seconds, 13. Here's what we're going to do in these two plays with those timeouts. You can do that. Teams do it all the time. So I'm not saying I would have passed it there. I understand your thought because there would have been a pass at some point in the sequence, but I definitely thinking about it more and more yesterday and what, because that's all everybody talked about. A play-action pass, if you're going to throw, would have been the way to go.
Seth Meyers had by far the funniest take on this in his monologue. He did a ton of Super Bowls, you would imagine. And he said, having Marshawn Lynch in your backfield in that situation and not giving him the ball is like trying to kill someone by having a gun and throwing it at them.
That's good.
That's a great line.
That is good.
Did you see Gronkowski dancing with Flo Rida at the party?
I mean,
I'm not sure. All these videos came out yesterday of the Patriots celebration party. You saw Robert Kraft dancing.
I mean, how do you not dig Gronk? How do you not like that guy?
Gronk wound up last night on Jimmy Kimmel, but he started his celebration dancing with Flo Rida on stage. And Flo Rida's got no shirt on. He's jumping up and down. And Gronk is he's hilarious.
Win or lose the Super Bowl, Gronk is going to have his time because we know that. He did it after the loss. Everybody ripped him. I was like, have a ball, dude. Are you kidding me? And the man knows how to have fun. And, oh, by the way, he's a great player.
He's a great player.
He's got it all going on.
And to the victor goes the spoils. And that spoil for him meant a trip to L.A. yesterday and a visit on Jimmy Kimmel last night on ABC. Here's a little bit of Gronk. This is him talking about the fight that happened at the very end of the Super Bowl.
Tom Brady, you guys were just running out the clock, which you do, kneeling down, and the Seahawks, some of them jumped over, and then there was a fight. And you rarely see a Super Bowl end like that where they were actually punching. You threw a couple of punches, I think.
I don't think I did.
Yeah, you did. Yeah. In fact, I think we have the video.
Roger. No, I did not.
Now, let's see. Now, you're number 87.
Let's see.
Yeah. Well, they started it, in fairness.
Oh!
Yeah. So there, that happened.
Ooh.
Have you not seen that yet?
Ooh.
What started that fight?
Roger, that wasn't me. Don't find me.
What happened? Is there something specific that set that off, or could you hear what was going on?
No, actually, during that fight?
Yeah.
Actually, we just went to take a knee, and I swear, I just went in to block the guy and, get in front of him, protect Tom Brady, because I don't know who's Tom Brady. I wasn't trying to protect him, right? He's our quarterback.
Yeah.
No big deal, but and then all of a sudden they went hard at us, and then I got pushed or something. I was like, screw it, last game of the year, I'm throwing some haymakers.
Oh my God. Not that anyone should think that's a good idea, but he is just very funny. No. He is very funny, Gronkowski. So we'll play some more of that as the morning goes on. But again, I'd love to hear from you this morning. have we been able to convince you? Because one of the dangers of doing this show at 6 o'clock in the morning after things happen is you just see something, you don't have a lot of time to process it, and you come in and you just start yelling and screaming. With 24 hours to think about it, I've now come around to thinking that it might have been the right decision by Pete Carroll to throw a pass on second down. Do you agree or disagree? Let's hear from you on Twitter through the 1-800-Flowers.com Twitter feed. Still to come, the latest on Johnny Manziel. We'll get you through that. Plus, once again, the numbers for the Super Bowl are in. And once again, I think they're a bunch of baloney.
The best of Mike and Mike.
Mike and Mike. You could win $1,000 in free gasoline from Exxon and Mobil just by telling us what fuels you and getting your friends to vote for your entry. It's the Exxon and Mobil What Fuels You contest. Rules and details at Exxon.com and Mobil.com. Mike and Mike.
You would be confident that in those 20 seconds, you're going to run one running play. Or you could throw it on that play. I get that. But my point is, once you're throwing it on that play, then you've basically done the same thing he did anyway, just in the reverse order. So he isn't the biggest idiot in the world.
I'm running the ball first. I'm giving my guy the chance to run it in before I throw it.
Before you throw it.
Yes.
All right, we are Mike and Mike. A lot of the conversation this morning is still across the country about the decision made yesterday, or 2 days ago now, by Pete Carroll to throw a pass. I've come around to thinking that it might have been the right decision. I'm not crazy about the particular pass play they called, but I do think that throwing a pass in that situation, you can easily argue it was the right thing to do. You certainly didn't have to do it, but you could make an argument that it made sense.
Let me just say that Darrell Bevell, the offensive coordinator, won't get the same treatment that Bob Gibson got. And I don't mean that Bob Gibson. You know, is Bob Gibson I'm talking about?
Is that the guy from
Bob Gibson, the Miracle of the Meadowlands?
Yeah, the Pisarcik play.
He was the offensive coordinator for the Giants. The play before the fumble, Pisarcik had knelt down. And then they called a running play, a handoff to Zonka, and that's, we know, our Herm Edwards scoop scored, and that was that. And Bob Gibson was fired the next day and never got another job in football again. And I believe he was 51 years old at the time. That's not going to happen to Bevell. Bevell someday, I believe, is going to be a head coach. Not obviously all the spots filled this year. It's not going to happen this year, but there's a lot of talk about the last play. So you start to bring in other big games where there's talk about one play.
Yeah, I mean, the Miracle of the Meadowlands. It wasn't a game that had anywhere near the meaning,
exactly,
of course, of the Super Bowl. But yes, it is one of the most memorable blunders. That one though is much more of a blunder. I mean, just take a knee and call it a day, as opposed to this circumstance where they needed to score. Our Sports Center brought to you by Subway. At Subway, make every morning the best morning ever with breakfast sandwiches made fresh with favorites like Chipotle Southwest sauce and green peppers on toasted flatbread. Find out why people love Subway breakfast. Subway, eat fresh. We'll get your reaction to the what were you doing or what was anyone you know doing that wasn't watching the Super Bowl. Because if the numbers are to be believed, 64%. Basically, 2 out of every 3 people in America didn't watch the Super Bowl.
Now, and I don't know enough about ratings to know. I guess we can get more if we want to get into Manziel. But when they get a household rating, there could be 20 people in that house. Yeah. I mean, so
my kids went to a party at a friend's house where there were like 40 people.
Do I think it's that high of people not watching? No, but it's still way more than you think it should be. About 5% not watching.
I think if we have roughly 300 million people in this country, right? It's a round number. It's roughly 300 million. I think like 298 million people watch it. And then like 2 other million people either had to work or were washing their hair.
Or there are how many number of people are maybe like under 5 years old?
But I mean, and even some of them are watching with their mom and dad and sitting there. I mean, I get it. I don't know what percentage of them. I don't know if they count in the household rating anyway. Yeah. One way or another, the numbers are dramatically understated. Okay, let's get to business. Browns quarterback Johnny Manziel finally raised his hand last week and admitted to his family and to the Browns that he needed help, that it was time to go to inpatient rehab for his possible dependence on alcohol. This is from a story on Cleveland.com by Mary Kay Cabot. On Tuesday of last week, he flew out of Cleveland and informed those close to him of his intentions. On Wednesday, Manziel checked himself into an undisclosed facility somewhere within driving distance of Cleveland, a place the Browns knew about and felt comfortable with. According to multiple sources, those close to Manziel were proud of him for taking such a big and difficult step. Not many 22-year-olds volunteer for inpatient rehab, but Manziel was ready, which is why his friends and family members are optimistic that he'll take it seriously and do the work that is needed to get well. Experts in the field say that rehab might not stick, especially for a young adult if they're not willing to go. on their own. So that is the latest that we have on Johnny Manziel. We heard the news that Manziel had gone into a facility right after our show ended yesterday. Mike, what do you think?
Well, I mean, it's a guy. This is what we always say, isn't it, about those who? And I've never been in a situation like this. I know you haven't either. We have Chris Carter on, who certainly has, and he had, thoughts about Josh Gordon and what Josh Gordon should have been released from the Browns, and Josh Gordon saying he doesn't have a problem with alcohol or with drugs. He had that long piece he wrote to Charles Barkley, Stephen A. Smith, and others who had basically judged him, and Johnny and what. Anybody who's gone through this says the first sign or the first road or the first step to recovery is realizing you have a problem.
Yeah, that's not specific to, and I do know a lot of people, one in particular, that has gone through the process, that has gone through the treatment, and this is true of almost anything. The first step in solving any problem is acknowledging that it is a problem, and that's the hardest step, because a lot of times you think, and we all know people that there are levels of all of this stuff, right? So we all know people that we worry about. You must in your life, and I do too.
Yeah.
You worry about, boy, it seems to me like that's starting to interfere with his or her life and all that kind of stuff. Doesn't mean that you lose your job. I mean, there are extremes you can go to where you just bottom out, but there are also times when this stuff is interfering with your life in ways that aren't as thoroughly obvious.
Right.
And it's easy at that point. Look, when you lose your job and your wife leaves you and all that, it's pretty easy to then say, I have a problem.
I've hit rock bottom and I need some help.
But if you're still functioning and things are, at least some things are still going well, then it might be more difficult. That's the part of it I've never lived through, to say, wait a minute, I have a problem.
Yeah, even though I'm still on the team, I could be the starting quarterback next year, and things, if I start to fly right a little bit, everything will be fine. But to raise your hand, as they said in the beginning of this article, and say, okay, I have some issues I need to deal with. And that's what, as far as the program, I'll find out the specifics of, are you for the NFL, when you, again, test positive for things. When you volunteer to go get help, that's a whole different category. Certainly not a great situation he's going through, but don't lump him in with those that have tested positive and get suspended. He's not in that group because he volunteered. We'll try and find out the exact specifics of exactly what it does. But also, to continue this, very interesting comments from his parents back in an article in 2012 about when he was growing up and their thoughts of him even now that are pretty revealing to what's going on right now.
Yes, we'll have those for you coming up off the top of the hour. The level of concern about it in Cleveland, whether or not the Browns have and are considering going in a different direction moving forward at quarterback. But all those things are secondary, in my opinion, to a person recognizing that he needs help. And the good news is he's in a position to get that help.
Yes, he is. Absolutely
and I think that's terrific. So whether or not he ever winds up being a great quarterback, that remains to be seen, whether he could have or he couldn't have been. But any chance that he has, I think, does seem now as though it was dependent upon this.
Mike and Mike.
See, here's the thing. If you walk into a room and there are 3 people in it, that means the chances are 2 of them didn't watch the Super Bowl. I just can't find that. It's unfathomable to me. It just doesn't make any sense. And frankly, it rubs me the wrong way. We're Mike and Mike. We're presented by Progressive Insurance. Mort coming up in 10 minutes on the Subway Fresh Take Hotline. By the way, you ever miss anything on the show? We have the Best of Mike and Mike podcast. It's available every morning on ESPNradio.com. You download it on your way home, whatever the case may be, and you catch up with all our favorite guests and all the best fun and all the rest of that. So it's there every single day on ESPNradio.com.
Listen, while I agree with you, I think the number is lower than it should be, because I don't think it can account for all the people that are in homes and everything, but because as far as how they do this rating. But I always thought you overstated we know it's already the most popular. It's the most watched. I get that. But I'm amazed at how you're amazed that you think everybody should be watching it when there are clearly...
Not that they should be. I think everyone is.
No, I think they're
your
not.
Your friend Turtle we just talked about, right? Sydney's
Yes.
friend Turtle. His name is Genevieve?
Genevieve Bradley.
Genevieve.
Yeah.
So Sydney tweets about her all the time.
Right.
And she doesn't know anything like, she didn't know who Tom Brady was.
No.
But she watched the Super Bowl.
She watched the Super Bowl because
everyone else is watching the Super Bowl.
They were. Yeah.
But that's part of the reason that everyone watches, because
Right.
it's just something everyone is doing. My daughter went to a party with a bunch of her friends at one of their houses. These are individually a collection of people. There are a bunch of 8th grade girls, many of whom probably would not on their own have watched the Super Bowl, but it was just something to do because everyone is doing it.
Did they sit there and watch were there adults in the room so the game was on, or was it just them? And did they really have the game on, or did they wait till halftime?
No, they had the game on. I don't know that they sat there and watched it intently.
No, just having the game on.
It was definitely on. Yes, I'm sure it was. I wasn't there, but I mean, I think it was on. I mean, let's put it this way. My daughter knew who won. She knew the most important things that happened in the game. I mean, that kind of stuff. I don't mean that everyone sits there with a notepad.
No, I understand that.
The television is on in the room, and you're present.
Yeah.
That to me, that counts. So that's my point. This is so completely measured because of all the people who get together and do things. Now, there are people who genuinely didn't watch. I continue to take the Twitter reaction. Scott in Bethlehem. My wife was scrapbooking. She loves football but hates the Pats and Seahawks. Can I ask a stupid question? What exactly is scrapbooking? And I know what a scrapbook is.
Well, isn't that when you put
but
together,
I know
right?
it as a noun, not so much as a verb.
When you're putting stuff into your scrapbook.
But I mean, what is it? You're just putting it in a book.
Well, what do you think is in a scrapbook?
Pictures?
It takes time. I mean, people want to decide if they have pictures, what order they want to do it, chronological, how they're putting in there, how they divide it.
I feel like there's more to it than that. I feel like there's a whole
lot more to
scrapbooking
it.
thing
there
going
is
on.
Absolutely a big thing, and the scrapbooking is. I'm not involved in it a lot, but
I'd like to see you scrapbook. I would like to incorporate the usage of scrapbook into this program as a verb, and I would like to see you undertake it.
What I lack, and I think you need for scrapbooking, is this thing called patience.
Yeah,
don't have a lot,
and a little bit of daintiness. I mean,
that's
sort of be moving things around with your little fingers.
Bruce says, number one, no one likes the Seahawks. Number two, everyone thinks the Patriots cheat. Conclusion, nobody cares about either team. Well, what I would say, Bruce, is it was the most watched program of all time. So there are at least some that cared.
Lou, my girlfriend and her mom were racing to put together puzzles as fast as they could.
Wow. Well,
it's something to do,
okay.
I suppose.
And Anthony says, I didn't watch because my Giants weren't in it. I have no desire to spend my time watching two teams I could care less about. That interests me more than any. That interests me. I'll be honest with you, more than somebody who just did. If you're not into sports, you're not. And I know plenty of. I do know people who aren't into sports. They just don't watch them. This is, to me, is more interesting. You watch the Giants. You have a team, which means I have to believe you're somewhat of a sports person. If you're devoted to your team, that you would just, I guess, bypass the biggest sport, the biggest game in your sport of which you have your team, and not even kind of tune in to watch.
And I'm kind of going a step farther than that. I understand that there are many, many people in this country who couldn't care less about sports. I like to say I believe sports has become the biggest niche in America. So some things are just universally popular. Basically, everyone likes movies. Everyone likes music. Those things are universal. And then there are things that become a niche. And I think of all those things, sports have become the biggest niche. And people like the two of us have ridden that wave over the last 20 years or so in a way that has benefited us enormously. Sports have become so much more popular than they were when you and I were growing up.
Right.
But the point I'm making is this is an event that transcends sports. It's like an American cultural event. Just watch it. I mean, John Legend singing "America the Beautiful" and military flyover, and I mean, it is a piece of Americana that I just have a difficult time picturing people not wanting to be a part of, not wanting to experience at least a little bit. And again, between the commercials and the halftime show and everything else, you have a variety of entertainment that goes beyond a football game.
It is the most watched program of all time. There are plenty of people watching it.
I still can't believe that 2/3 of the Americans didn't. So let me ask you this question.
All right.
Who's the most famous football player in America? Let's take America, take the globe out of it, because globally, American football players are much less famous than athletes in other sports. Basketball players, soccer players, I think would be number one.
Soccer, basketball.
As far as the sports that we focus in on the most, basketball by far.
Basketball would be number one.
And golf and tennis to a degree
but
also, because they're
number
international.
one in the world.
Everywhere but here,
without a doubt. Yes.
So a guy, like a guy like Messi or Ronaldo.
Well, I'm just looking at best pitchman. I was looking at for pitchman.
Let me hear.
George Clooney was like at number one. Taylor Swift was there. Warren Buffett was there. You know the only athlete in the top five?
Don't tell me. Let me guess.
If you don't get it, you'll kick yourself.
I'm guessing it's either Peyton Manning or LeBron James.
Nope.
It's neither of them?
No.
It's an American. I mean, you're talking about an American sports athlete.
No, I'm talking about.
Oh, no, like a global athlete.
Yeah.
Oh, Cristiano Ronaldo?
No. Right sport. Not playing
Soccer.
anymore.
Oh, David Beckham.
Beckham.
Oh.
Yep. Beckham is
But that's
top
globally,
there.
or in the
That's
United States?
globally. Yeah.
So, but let's focus on the U.S.
Okay.
because American football is not popular outside of the U.S.
No, it is not. No.
They're trying very hard to
Yes,
get
they
popular.
are, and more power to them. But it's just not at this point.
But within
Correct.
the U.S., is the most famous American football player, is it Peyton Manning?
I gotta believe
Would you say
so,
he's
yes.
the most famous? I would agree with you. Where would you say Peyton Manning would rank on the list? We can't seem to find a definitive list of this as far as Q rating or whatever it is that measures this. Where would he rank on the list of just the most famous Americans in
famous
America?
Americans, sports fan?
No. The most famous Americans. How high up on the list? Is he in the top 20?
I don't even. I mean, that's. There are a number of
Is Donald
athletes.
Trump more famous than Peyton Manning in America?
Yes.
Yes.
Are you saying famous or recognizable? Q rating?
Well, I mean, I don't know. Again, I don't know exactly what a measurement of that is.
Yes.
More people know Donald Trump than Peyton Manning.
But before you even get to outside the world of sports, stay in the world of sports where the list goes.
LeBron,
Kobe,
Tiger.
I mean, there's be a number of athletes.
Any baseball players? Jeter?
Well, Jeter's no.
That be it? In that sport?
Probably be it.
No hockey player. There may be a handful of basketball players.
Yeah.
Maybe A-Rod.
He may be outside the top 5 in sports before we even get to the
Where would
world.
someone like Dale Earnhardt Jr. be? Is he the most famous driver? Would he be higher on that list?
Dale Earnhardt,
He
Jeff
wouldn't be ahead of
Gordon.
Peyton Manning.
I don't
think those guys are more
I don't
famous
think
than
so. No,
Peyton Manning.
I would agree with that. I think he'll be behind the
handful of basketball players,
and
that's it.
And that's it. Maybe a Jeter.
Maybe Jeter.
And then,
because those guys have, of course, like Peyton Manning has hosted Saturday Night Live.
Yeah, he has.
He does so many commercials.
But then go outside to singers and actors, and you're going to start, from the Taylor Swifts of the world.
I get it, but what I'm now, hear me out. Go through the age spectrum, okay? Mm-hmm. So my daughter knows who Peyton Manning is, and my mother knows who Peyton Manning is, and they're whatever they are, 60-something years apart in age. Many of the people that my mother then know, my daughter does not, and the people my daughter knows, my mother does not. So my daughter, knows who, like Miley Cyrus and people. My mother doesn't know who Miley. She may know who that is.
I bet she does.
Miley Cyrus?
I bet your mother knows who it is. Yeah,
knows who Miley Cyrus is.
And Taylor Swift, absolutely.
Maybe.
I think without a doubt.
The ones that they probably know are the super movie stars.
Right.
Because everyone sees movies. Mm-hmm. So I don't know who would be considered the biggest ones. Is Brad Pitt the biggest movie star we have now? I mean, whoever that would be. Whoever would be the biggest movie star. Because there wouldn't be someone who's like in the younger movies that are like Jennifer Lawrence does not fall in that category. Like my daughter would lose her mind. Mm-hmm. Even guys like Chris Hemsworth and stuff like that. Tom Hanks, see, my kids, Tom Hanks came on the screen. I took Stevie to a Knick game. Right. True story. Tom Hanks is sitting courtside at a Knick game, on Celebrity Row, and they show like the scene from the movie where he's on the desert island, Castaway. Yeah. When he's yelling Wilson, right. Whatever. Then they cut to a shot of him live sitting there. People are clapping. The guy who was Shooter McGavin in the movie Happy Gilmore is sitting next to him. Stevie goes, "Dad, look, it's Shooter McGavin."
Who's the guy next to Shooter?
Stephen had no idea who Tom Hanks was. No idea.
Certainly a generational
Stevie's
thing.
12.
Yeah.
So that's my point. Sports kind of crosses over a lot of that. I think the athletes are more famous than we're giving them credit for.
I think they're
very, very top level.
I think
ones.
they're less famous than you think. Without you were trying to say. I remember. Weren't you asking this of Ben Affleck? That there was a sports person more popular than Jennifer
Tiger. I asked him when I did an interview with Ben Affleck. I did an interview with Ben Affleck many years ago, and I asked him this was when he was dating J-Lo. I think they were engaged actually. Yeah. So I mean they were.
I think it's the last time Ben Affleck wore a suit.
Perhaps. So they were a very high-profile couple at that time. And he's now married to another very famous actress, but not as famous as J-Lo.
Right.
And so they were like one of these super couples.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember asking him, like, how does that compare, do you think, to someone like Tiger Woods? And he just laughed at me.
Oh, and I laughed at you because you actually thought Tiger was more popular. It's not. Wouldn't even be in the same stratosphere.
Here's a list we have. This is the Forbes 2014 Celebrity 100. So this is the way they calculate the most famous people. Number 1 in America is Beyonce. Number 2 is LeBron James. Mm-hmm. So LeBron James is the second most famous person in America. Number 3 is Dr. Dre. I have a very tough time imagining this can't be just how famous you are. This may be how much money you make.
Yeah, this has to be something else.
There's nowhere in the world Dr. Dre is the third most famous person in America, because 4 and 5 are Oprah and Ellen.
Yeah, the last paragraph says in second place, LeBron James, we estimate the basketball player earned $72 million last year.
Oh, this is how much money.
So this has something to do with money.
Okay,
so
we'll figure that out.
Yeah.
I think the star power of all of this. I mean, Brady would be a half a step down from Peyton Manning. Again, I do this every year, mostly jokingly. But in my mind, I just can't fathom how many people don't watch the Super Bowl.
Who's more popular in the world, Tom Brady or his wife?
See, I mean, she's famous but how well do people know models? I mean, she's a very famous model as models go. I would guess, I think she makes more money than he does.
She does.
But I would guess he's more famous.
I'm going to disagree.
I really don't know. I don't know how you quantify that. If Gisele Bündchen is walking down the street in Paris with Tom Brady, are more people saying, who's that with Tom Brady or who's that with Gisele Bündchen?
They're saying, who's that with Gisele Bündchen?
If they're walking down the street in Kansas City, Missouri.
It may be the other way.
Yeah.
Maybe, but I'm not sure.
The list is actually more than I thought it was. The list is a measurement of the impact that these celebrities have in our society or on our society. And so it's saying that Dr. Dre is that high up there with Floyd Mayweather and a bunch of other guys. So, all right, you learn something new every day.
Yeah.
Mike and Mike will try and learn something from Chris Mortensen. He'll join us live in just a moment here. Again, some of the NFL news out there, which is all the second-day stuff on the Super Bowl, the upcoming Ted Wells report, and the latest on Johnny Manziel. Mort, our NFL insider extraordinaire, joins us on the Subway Fresh Thing Hotline. Good morning, Mort.
Good morning, guys. How are you?
Very well. Before we get to anything else, having had a day to sort of digest it, I don't know if you heard any of the beginning of the show, but I have come around a little bit on the decision that Pete Carroll and the Seattle coaching staff makes on what turns out to be the play that cost them the Super Bowl. Not so much on the actual throw they made, but the idea that throwing a pass on second down actually is not only defensible, but may have been a sensible decision to make considering the time remaining and his only having one timeout left. As you talked to people all around the sport yesterday, what were you hearing about that last play?
Well, I think the majority still believe what the general population believes, that when you get down there, you've got to give the ball to Marshawn Lynch or give Russell Wilson and Lynch the run option with the pass built into it, in which Russell could throw it away in order to stop the clock. I ran into LaDainian Tomlinson yesterday when I was flying out of Phoenix, and as soon as I saw him, it struck me that there was a game one time when he was with the San Diego Chargers, and Marty Schottenheimer was the coach, and they had 4 shots at scoring. They lost the game. Never once did LT touch the football, and Marty, after the game, I think he said it publicly, but I know he told me privately, he says, there's an old adage that says, think about the players, not the plays. In other words, if you've got a stud like Marshawn Lynch or Russell Wilson, give them an opportunity to score. Now, you're saying, well, Wilson threw the football, but give them that run option ability with the ability also to throw the ball away. For the most part, I think that's the feeling around from football people.
And I completely agree with that. It would have been Marshawn Lynch or the Russell Wilson option to run it as well. As Greeny just mentioned, while the Super Bowl on the field is over, the aura of the Super Bowl is not, I would imagine, until the Deflategate investigation is over. What is the latest on that?
Well, the word all along, once the league started its formal investigation, and we should note, it was the league that started a formal investigation, not any media member, but the league. And if you remember, they had a statement the Friday before saying it was going to take several weeks. So that was a week ago Friday. Several weeks sounds like a couple more weeks at least going forward to determine how the Patriot footballs were underinflated. And they specifically said the Patriots football. The league said that. It has been confirmed now by Troy Vincent, who's the vice president of football operations by the league, that it was the Colts and Ryan Grigson, their general manager, who had actually basically turned them in. They say turn them in. What happened, and we had talked about this several times on the network, is before the game you submit a list. Each side submits a list. Hey, watch out for this gadget play or this trick play, or we have a formation that's a little bit different. And then on the list the Colts submitted to the game officials, it was keep an eye on these underinflated footballs based on the experience we had on November 16th. And so something happened for them to confiscate those footballs at halftime. And then what we don't know, and nobody has assigned specific blame, we don't know who did that. The NFL says the officials follow protocol. They do gauge the footballs. Everybody's into the documentation before the games. I imagine before games they'll now be documented. But they do gauge them, and the officials determine, hey, those footballs were normal, within range, 12.5 to 13.5. At halftime, they determined they needed to be thrown out because they were no longer. The Colts footballs were fine. So they really are going through, video surveillances. You have to determine whether there was a pattern of activity. Do you go to other stadiums and see if you can get into their hard drives and see any similar activity before their games? And the bottom line we all agree with, it could have been a Frisbee. It could have been a golf ball. The score was 45-7. So even Commissioner Goodell said on Friday at his press conference, this was not a matter of a competitive advantage in their eyes. It was a matter of integrity, rules of integrity. Where the investigation ends up or concludes, I would say 2-3 weeks is what we're expecting from this point, but there's nothing definite.
Mike and Mike were presented by Progressive Insurance. Chris Mortensen is with us. Then there's the news out of Cleveland yesterday that Johnny Manziel has checked into a rehab facility. A lot of people around him seem to be pleased with this to the extent that he is getting help that many people around him, it appears, were aware or felt that he needed. What are you hearing from in and around Cleveland? Again, there's two sides to this. The human side of this, we all certainly hope that a young man with a problem who is now addressing it can get himself together. That's first and foremost. The second part of it, of course, is the football part of it, and that's at least one of the things the Browns have to be concerned with. What are you hearing around the league and from Cleveland?
Well, General Manager Ray Farmer's come out and said, that they fully support Johnny Manziel. When they were assembling most of their new offensive coaching staff, I've been told Johnny Manziel's name barely came up or didn't come up. Didn't sound like they were really planning on him this season. Now he's going to be part of the mix as long as he can certainly conquer whatever's happening with him off the field. I mean, we all know the speculation, the rumors. Hey, we can go back to the time he was sent home from the Manning passing camp, and I can remember sitting on the Sports Center set saying, scouts see a guy who lives his life recklessly on and off the field, because then there's still the idea, can he physically play this game? So I think they're going to be in the business. We know they're going to be in the business for another quarterback. Re-signing Brian Hoyer makes sense. People are looking at the free agent list. You guys have mentioned the names. I'll throw one name out there that, trades are possible. Mike Glennon of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, you look at his numbers, and you look at the type of quarterback that needs to play in the AFC North, big, strong throwers. Mike Glennon is a guy that I'm going to watch out for to see if there's any activity around him, and that's without any information on that one.
Golick actually thought of him a little bit earlier this morning.
Golick is, the resident football genius this morning.
Yeah, right. No little question of that. Mort, always a pleasure. Thank you. We will talk to you soon.
All right, guys. Take care.
There's Chris Mortensen on the Subway Fresh Take Hotline at Subway. Experience the breakthrough taste of new grilled chicken strips. Subway, eat fresh.
We can get into this more later, but I know we have legs coming up to talk a little basketball. But, we keep talking about whether they should have thrown it there or not. We come around us. I'm going to throw a little wrinkle into that by saying this right now. If that pass was complete to Lockett,
yeah,
they still would have had to use their timeout. You know why?
Because he wouldn't have scored?
He wouldn't have scored. He would not have scored. You watch that play and say he put the ball and Lockett actually caught that. Watch what happened. But Butler did the same thing. Knifed up there and hit Lockett as Lockett was catching the ball. Look what happened to Lockett. Watch the play through. We look at the interception. Lockett ended up getting knocked backwards. So even if that ball is put in the chest of Lockett, Butler is coming up and hitting him. He would not have gotten in. Even if he caught that leading, or if we put it on his back shoulder right in the chest or low, and the way Butler came up and was able to hit him, I don't think he gets in.
The question is, would the ball have crossed the goal line in his hand?
His
body doesn't, but the ball, well, I think when Butler catches the ball, he's in the end zone. The ball is in the end zone.
I don't think so. I think when you see another side view of that thing, we'll show it again and see a side view of where it was. I don't personally think he would have gotten in. Could be completely wrong.
No, you're probably closer to right than wrong. We're watching another angle of it here.
Butler's out of the end zone.
Yeah, Butler's out of the end zone.
He's out of the end zone. Gets actually the collision, knocks Lockett down, and knocks Butler back into the end zone.
The best of Mike and Mike.
Mike and Mike.
You like this one?
H to the Izzo. Mike and Mike, ESPN Radio. We're presented by Progressive Insurance. Joining us now with his Subway Fresh Take, our NFL front office insider extraordinaire, former player, great insight into so many different things. Our friend Louis Riddick is here in our studio. How are you, Louis?
I'm doing good. How are you guys?
Louis feels very, now that we're getting to have you in here regularly, feels very formal. Do people call you Lou?
Louis.
Louis.
You know what? My mom, some people call me Lou, but I like Louis.
You like Louis?
Yeah,
like
Louis. It's cool.
Well, I'm with Louis. I'm good with it.
I try not to be high maintenance, but Louis works.
We'll go with Louis. Okay, no problem. Okay, let's just start by you. I saw you were standing over there, so you heard the conversation we were having. Overall, what is your take on the sequence of events that winds up deciding the Super Bowl?
Yeah, I mean, I'm really with the masses here. And sometimes, coaches a lot of times will overthink things. Who got you to the Super Bowl? Russell and Beast Mode got you there on offense. Heck, you could say, I mean, really, they're the attitude of the whole football team in general. I know that the matchup didn't look favorable to him. They had 5 bigs on the line, 3 type of hybrid players, and 3 corners on there defensively. But it's beast mode. It's the best running back in the National Football League. If you run him and he doesn't get in, hey, maybe you do use your timeout. And then you have to kind of be thinking ahead and thinking, okay, what is our best pass play? Not our most obvious pass play. Look, pick routes are obvious down there. Obviously, New England had scouted that route. Obviously, they knew, they played the percentages. So you almost have to be a step ahead of that thinking, okay, what is our number one route? Now, what have we shown that maybe, or what have we used that maybe they have never seen? I mean, that route was really so standard. Remember the routes that Julian Edelman was running against Darrell Simon?
Yeah.
The double moves? How about that? Why wouldn't you go with something like that? Something that's, give him a double move of some type down there, get Russell out on the perimeter, give him a run-pass option. There's numerous different things you could have done if you wanted to throw the football. That seems so basic. That's almost, I don't want to say that's an insult to Bill's intelligence, but he had it, his guys were waiting for it. The kid, Malcolm, was waiting on that route.
Malcolm Butler was on our show yesterday and said they did that when they worked on that exact same play in practice, and he got beat.
Sure.
And Bill came up to him and said, you got to make that play. You got to attack and make that play. And Browner made the play by stopping Kearse from getting any kind of penetration. But you're right. They played it beautifully. Play action to me would have been everybody was expecting Marshawn Lynch. Do you think, and again, it doesn't mean anything because they just would have called a timeout.
Yeah.
If Lockett caught that ball, I don't think he would have
No, he
scored.
wasn't scoring.
So, they probably would have had to call a timeout again. So you're going through the same sequence anyway. Even if Marshawn ran the ball there and didn't make it in, you'd call your timeout, and then you'd have your couple of plays left. But I think a lot of people assumed, well, if he completed that pass, it was a touchdown. It wasn't a touchdown.
Yeah, I'm just looking at it like this. Sometimes defenses are just going to know what you're doing. And sometimes you got to say, you know where we're coming, and we still are going to put it in there. It's 1 yard for the Super Bowl. Something tells me that Marshawn would have found a way to get that ball in there. And we've seen him do it how many times? I know he was stopped, he ran the ball 5 times from the one and only scored one. Right. So what?
I'm
it's
with
the
you there.
Super Bowl.
You throw that out.
That's right. I wouldn't even be thinking about
Nope.
that. I'm thinking, this is the guy they call Beast Mode.
Mm-hmm.
He's going to find a way in the Super Bowl to win this game for us right here. And I just would have put it in his hands, and I would have been like, hey, I'm going to ride or die with you
And
right now.
If we lose, but I gave it to him, I'm cool with it.
No, that's not to say if he didn't make it in, you're going to maybe throw the ball anyway.
Exactly.
But just give him his shot.
Yep.
Just put it in his hands, give him his shot, and just see what happens.
Mike and Mike dance with the one that brung you. Mike and Louis Riddick is here in our studio. And so now you look at the two different sides of this thing, and let's start with Seattle. We're going to go live out to Seattle in a few minutes with Brock Huard and get his perspective from one who covers the team on a day-to-day basis. But one of the reasons clearly that they have been able to maintain their level of talent has been that their most important player was making so little money.
Yep.
Russell Wilson still on his rookie contract as a third-round pick. We all know he made $600 and something thousand this year, and he's going to make significantly more than that going forward. How do you, as a front office, approach that with him? Because he's aware that he lives in a world where if he demands the maximum money that he can, A, it's going to hurt his team, and B, it's going to hurt his image because people are going to criticize him for it, whether that's fair or unfair. How do you think this process works?
Talking to the guys who negotiate contracts for a living in the NFL, and I have a few who I'm real close with, they're going to take care of Russell. They have to. They owe it to him. And they want to do things the right way. You got to reward him. It's not one of these situations where I don't think it's going to be where he winds up giving them a discount, so to speak, and they wind up trying to get him below market value. They know what Russell means to him. They also know they have already said, John has already said he's going to take care of Byron Maxwell. What you have to count on then, when you understand that an inordinate amount of the pie is going to other places now, you have to rely on the program, which is, look, we have developed guys like Byron, we've developed guys like Richard Sherman, we have found guys in later rounds and in free agency, and we believe so much in our program that we'll wind up being able to get cheaper labor, so to speak, and developing it and putting it into the pipeline, and we'll be okay. That's just the nature of the beast now. That's just something you just have to account for. Not every team would be able to do that. A lot of teams, if they wound up sinking this much money into the quarterback position and other certain players, they would take it, their roster would just start to wilt. It would start to rot from the bottom because they're not good at developing the rest of the roster. Seattle's one of the best. New England's one of the best. That's why those guys are playing in the Super Bowl, because they're good at developing all 53 plus 8 on the practice squad, plus any other number of young players that come through there. I don't have any doubt that Seattle will be just fine, even though more money is going to be tied up into roster.
Would you say the same thing about the Colts? Because they're in the same situation.
Well,
Andrew Luck.
You know what? We're going to find out. We're going to find out as far as how they can develop the rest of the roster, how Ryan Grigson can continue to uncover players that have the kind of traits that they want and then bring them along. That's what winds up happening in this kind of salary cap system. Your team-building prowess gets put to the test, not just as a GM and a scout, as a coach, as a trainer, as a strength and conditioning guy, as a guy who's a member of player programs and helps counsel kids. Yeah. I'm talking like I'm so old. But guys who help them out as far as like how they're transitioning in life off the field, all of that. Believe me, Seattle has all of that buttoned up from A to Z. That's why they're able to have these guys come out of nowhere, and people are going, man, how do they find these guys? It's a total team effort.
It's impressive.
And they're one of the best.
Yep.
I'm looking at Bobby Wagner's situation. There's another guy, and Tony Dungy voted for him for MVP of the league, and I understand the rationale. I wouldn't have voted for him, but I do understand the thinking. Pretty much everyone says their whole season turned back around when he came back healthy. He's a guy who made $1.3 million, or his cap number was $1.3. That includes the prorated portion of his bonus. So you're talking about taking care of Byron Maxwell. I got to believe that's a guy they can't afford to lose, right?
Sure, I believe he has one more year. 2015,
Chancellor,
right? Cam's already taken care of.
They took care of Earl Thomas and Sherman, right?
Yep. And Cam, Earl, and Sherman are already locked
so Cam
up.
is. I'm sorry, that's my bad. I didn't know he was as well.
And, I mean, there's another guy. See, this is how I remember when Cam came out of Virginia Tech. He was one of those guys. At the time, it was kind of not in vogue to get safeties who were over 6'2", 6'3". Remember the old David Fulcher type, Steve Atwater. Like, people thought that they were going by the way of the dinosaur.
Right.
But Seattle knows exactly what they're looking for. Exactly what they're looking for. And sometimes they can get players on the cheap because other teams kind of stereotype certain players, and they go, we like those kind. We like big, tall, long corners, guys who are 6'3", 6'4", like Brandon Brown.
Right.
Pete has a certain thing that he likes. They go out and find it. I just have a very calm sense that they're going to be just fine regardless.
It reminds me of Jimmy Johnson, how he would draft and find those gems, especially on the O-line later in the draft, and how that can pay off for you. Okay, let's shift gears. If you do not know or did not hear, Johnny Manziel checked himself into rehab. So what's happening right now in the Cleveland Brown offices?
Obviously, first and foremost, and I don't know if I've done a good enough job of expressing this personally. First and foremost, you want to make sure that the kid on a personal level is getting the help that he needs. And when you bring guys into your program, I mean, it's kind of just like college. Even though it's the pros, it's still like college, especially for young guys. You don't want to see them hurting. You don't want to see them doing bad, making bad decisions that are hurting themselves off the field, regardless of football. So first and foremost, obviously, they want to make sure that he's good. But from a football perspective, look, the worst thing that you can have happen to you when you're drafting players or bringing in players via free agency is to miss on character. You can miss on skill set because that happens. Sometimes the fit just doesn't work. But as a scout, whether it's a college scout or a pro scout, you're a private eye. You're trying to find out everything you can, and I'm telling you what owners don't like. Owners don't like they don't like when you miss, period. But they really don't like when you bring someone in, and there was information out there that should have caused you to pause and maybe not push a guy so hard, then it comes back to bite you. And unfortunately, there was so much smoke surrounding Johnny that these were some of the things that could possibly happen. That I'm sure they're sitting there going, now they quickly are going to have to shift gears. Ray Farmer has already talked about the fact that, look, we're already in the market for looking for another quarterback.
Well, they needed to
again,
anyway, right?
Yeah, but see, Mike, I mean, this is the 22nd pick of the first round. It wasn't like, hey, we took a flyer on the guy in the 5th.
Right.
It's the 22nd pick of the first round, and you know what else is happening? The 8th pick of the first round, their other draft pick, you're not hearing much about him, but guess what? he's kind of been a disaster for him too.
He certainly has.
So right now, the Browns are going, you can't miss on 2 guys in the first round like that. Those are kind of things that right now they're scrambling, going, man, we got to nail this guy.
And that was Justin Gilbert, the defensive back.
We're Mike and Mike. We're presented by Progressive Insurance. Louis Riddick here, his Subway Fresh Take. Can you stick around a little bit?
Sure.
Let's keep you here because there's a lot more I'd like to do with you. We're also going to go live to Seattle. Brock Huard, 710 ESPN out there from the Seahawks facility on exactly what the Russell Wilson contract is going to do to the future of the NFC champs. A couple of more things I want to do. We have Louis Riddick, who's still in here with us, our NFL front office insider. You see him on NFL Insiders every day, 3 o'clock Eastern on ESPN and the Watch ESPN app. Quickly to respond to some people who were saying, when I was talking about how they needed to throw one pass in that sequence because the time was running down, people are saying they allowed the time to run down. They should have run their play sooner. Well, hold on. Bear in mind, they were trying to serve 2 purposes. They're trying to score, and they're trying not to leave the Patriots any time.
Yeah.
So for them to have run that play with 40 seconds left really wouldn't have made sense. Now you run it with 40 seconds left. Yes, you can easily run 3 plays, but now you're giving Tom Brady 40 seconds in a 3-point game with timeouts left. So there's a little bit of both of those, right, Louis? I mean, that's the complicated thing about this is you're trying to do 2 things at once, and in the end, obviously, they wound up doing neither.
Yeah, sure. I mean, and you know what? Those kind of situations too. Like when I worked in Philadelphia, you know, as one of the pro scouts, sometimes we were on the headset and we were able to listen to the coaches go through their game time decisions in real time. That is a pressure-packed situation. Sometimes you think, you know, as you're sitting there watching it on TV, that it seems like the decision-making process would be real simple and easy and real common sense. When the guys are under the gun like that, you'd be amazed at how much things become helter-skelter down there, and people are yelling back and forth, and there's so much indecision. What kind of personnel do we want on the field? Do we want to run it? Do we want to throw it? And it's not as calculated as it seems now as we're sitting here talking about it. It seems pretty easy. That is a pressure-packed situation. That's why when I heard you guys talking about Bill and saying that he was just kind of letting it all play out, look, he had already prepared for this kind of – that's what makes him great. He had goal line on the field, but he also had 3 corners on the field because he knew they had 3 wide receivers. So he said, look, I have enough guys to stop the run, and I have my 3 best cover guys out there. If you beat me, you beat me. But I'm prepared. I kind of know what you may want to do, but I'm prepared. And that's why when you see him, how often have you seen New England sideline looking like it's helter-skelter and late calling time? He was just standing there like this.
He just had
his arms crossed going,
I'm with you.
And people were going, well, does he not really realize what's happening? Or I would bet you he was just like, hey, if you beat me, you beat me. But I know what you're going to do. I have a good idea of what you're going to do. That's why he is who he is.
Let's get the Seattle perspective on this. Brock Huard from 710 ESPN Seattle joins us live this morning. His show, Brock and Salk, in Seattle, broadcasting live from the Seahawks facility today. Hoping to sit down with Pete Carroll and other members of the team. Brock, Mike and Louis Riddick are in here. And let's start with that before we get to the future. Now that we are, 36 hours or whatever it is removed from the Super Bowl, what is the general tone of the conversation in Seattle and even amongst the organization about the pass that is thrown on that second down?
Well, are you sure you want the Seattle perspective? Because it hurts, man. It is nothing but pain out here. I think the lowest point in Seattle sports history, outside of possibly the Sonics being ripped out of town, and I think many fans felt like that was completely out of their control, and a lot of forces at play there with the league and the city and the owner and everything. But as far as something happening on the field, as you can imagine, this is rock bottom. You go from complete euphoria, the miraculous catch to Jermaine Kearse, the best closing team in all the NFL. You're 3 feet away, and it just gets ripped out and ripped away from you. And, yeah, just emotionally, the most emotional day that I've ever been a part of in Seattle yesterday, and having the radio show and doing it, to kind of get a chance to hear from that and feel some of that. And it was a very, very painful day. From the organization's perspective, much of that conversation that you guys just had as far as Bill Belichick in New England goes, hey, Seattle is a finishing team. They win in the final minutes. They've had much more hectic moments than that game and that Super Bowl and that 2-minute drive. So they, I think, also were very prepared. They liked what they had, and unfortunately the kid from New England made a better play than the Seahawks executed offensively.
Yeah, no question about that. The other thing that I've heard gathering enough momentum that it feels worthy of asking, because there are legitimate reporters who have written some stories suggesting that there were people in that Seattle locker room who believed that there was, I'm going to use the word conspiracy, but a decision, a concerted decision and effort made not to allow Marshawn Lynch to be the hero for whatever reason, based upon his behavior all week or based upon his future contract status. I hesitate to even bring it up because it seems so ludicrous to me, but there were too many of these reports yesterday out there to ignore it completely. Are you hearing anything about that? What is your take on it?
Well, what it does is it goes back to earlier this season when this locker room did have a lot of volatility. And that story, I think, very well told of how the group had to get together and say, man, enough is enough. I mean, who cares who gets the credit? Who cares how they lead? And you got two guys that couldn't be more different. I mean, Marshawn Lynch and Russell Wilson, when you create an athlete and a quarterback and a running back and their perspective on how they go about their work are totally different human beings. And, yeah, and when you lose and when things go the wrong way and fingers get pointed, that I think is a reflection, quite honestly, of so much of the back and forth. And I'll use that word again, that volatility that we felt around here when this team was struggling, and to see it kind of come to the surface again in a very emotional moment may not have been a huge surprise. There is no way, there is absolutely no way, I would bet every dollar I own that in that moment in those headsets that Lewis was talking about, there was any conversation of, yeah, let's make Russell the MVP. You know, let's not give it to Marshawn. I don't want Marshawn to be the MVP. I don't want any of it. There is no way that that's going in through anyone's mind in that moment other than their plan to win.
Completely, 100% agree with that. All right, Brock, is with your thought or anybody around their thought, you know, fans, that once Russell Wilson goes from $660,000 a year to $15 to $18 million a year or more, that the team is going to be disrupted a bit?
It's going to be challenging. I don't think there's any debate about that. Anybody that doesn't think it will be difficult to figure out from a business and a flow chart standpoint how it's all going to work. The only, again, nice thing is this year you had 8 guys leave in the offseason, many of those guys some veteran starters, and then you lose 2 D tackles, a tight end, you trade Percy Harvin in season, you lose your rookie receiver, you continually lost people throughout this season, so you had an immense amount of churn. I mean, it wasn't as if it was the run to the Super Bowl the year before, where you had a group of core veteran guys and very few injuries and were incredibly stable. I mean, this thing was unstable from the offseason forward and trading Percy Harvin midway through, and yet, you know, they calmed those waters and reacted and handled it. And I think as long as you've got 3-24, the head coach and the young pieces that you have defensively already locked in for the next 4 years, I think you've got a foundation here in place. But yes, it will be a challenge to make sure you kind of align all those pieces and you do it from a business perspective that you can sustain some level of success here.
All right, again, Brock and Salk, for those of you in Seattle on 710 ESPN, broadcasting live from the facility today, hoping to sit down with Pete Carroll and other members of the team. Good to talk to you. Thanks a million, Brock.
Thanks, Brock.
Hey, you got it, guys.
This has been the Best of Mike and Mike on ESPN Radio Pod Center. To hear more from Mike and Mike, log on to ESPNradio.com and become an ESPN Radio Insider.
The Best of Mike and Mike. What fuels you? Here's Kim going downtown for a dance class. Going to her daughter's soccer game.
Come on, Katie, you can do it! Woo-hoo!
Kim fuels up at Exxon and Mobil stations, where our quality gasoline helps improve fuel economy, and where she could win $1,000 in free Exxon Mobil gift cards just by telling us what fuels her, like dance class or her kids. 10 weekly winners. Full details at Exxon.com or Mobil.com. Exxon and Mobil. Energy lives here.
No purchase necessary. Ends April 7, 2015. Restrictions apply. Actual fuel economy benefits may vary.